First of all, a warm welcome to our new sponsor, Classics Museum, located in Hamilton. In this episode we talk about the Speedway located in Western Springs in Auckland. I talked to Danny Lendich, who's been building midgets for a very long time. I also talked to Marcel Facoory, who has a long association with Speedway, as did his late father, Reese Facoory. I'm also going to talk to Gordon McIsaac, who has an extensive collection of Speedway memorabilia. So let's start with Danny Lendich. So Danny, explain to me this axle that you've improved. Back in the day, it's got a, what you say?
It's a drop front axle.
Yes.
And the reason for me doing this was the spring comes on the front like it is on this car here.
Yep.
And you lose some of the spring rate that controls the drive of the car to go forward. So I mounted it on the top like the cars were 30 years ago. But they didn't have a coil spring, they had a normal car spring across the front. So when I mounted that, I went down to the racetrack. I had an American driver coming down, and he came down there and we took the car down to the track, and they said to me, "Oh, you can't do that, it's an unfair advantage." So I said, "Oh, well, Jerry, we can't race," and they'd already advertised him. So they said, "Oh, well, away you go," and they let us race. But all I really done was went back 30 years ago.
So you're only doing what's already been done. So
yeah, already been done. Yeah.
So how can that be an unfair advantage?
Yeah, and if you don't have an advantage, how are you going to win? It's like our All Blacks. If they don't have an advantage, how are they going to win?
Yes. And, by the way, this is Gordon and Marcel. Welcome to our little show. Danny was talking about a drop axle. I see this has got a drop axle on it, and he got the. Well, they told him that his drop axle design that he designed was an unfair advantage. But he said, "It's not. I haven't invented this. It's, they used this back in 1930." But they'd already advertised the guy who's going to race this particular car, so it went ahead. But he was quite chuffed about this drop head design, and I see this has got one.
I thought they were all like that.
Oh yeah, well I guess they were back in the day.
The purpose of the drop axle was to lower the centre of gravity of the vehicle, so that the axle was shaped like a curve, and that would reduce the centre of gravity.
Right.
Make the car handle a lot better on the corners.
Right. And I see this has got a spring design in it, unlike the other one, which has got a spring that goes right across the front. Yeah.
That's how they first started in America.
Oh, okay. So how long had Americans been racing midgets prior to coming to New Zealand?
Only about 2 or 3 years.
Oh, really? So it's relatively new in 1935.
They started in 1932
Okay.
in America, yeah.
So it's a bit like somebody saying, "Oh, no, let's make a small car and race them."
Yeah.
We'll call them, I don't think they do call them midgets over there, they call them something else, don't they?
No, there's still midgets in
Midgets.
there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it was just a scaled down version of the big cars they were racing.
And that was right back in the early days, when everybody whose dog was making a car, and then everybody whose dog was having one made to race.
Yeah.
So to get the name out there, Yeah. So I just see the other one. It looks like they've got smaller motors. They've got V-dub motors.
Yeah, that's the Volkswagen,
Yeah.
That's what we originally they were Model A.
Model A?
Ford Model A.
Yeah.
And then they went to a Jeep motor, Willys Jeep motor.
From the war.
Yeah, and I had a midget with a Willys Jeep motor in it. And then they went to Ford V8 60s, and then I went to Offenhauser, and I've gone to these motors here, which are...
Was an Offenhauser a 6-cylinder?
4-cylinder.
4-cylinder. What was so special about Offenhauser?
It was before my time, but it was purposely built.
For midgets?
For midgets. By Offenhauser himself.
It's off, he's got quite a reputation,
It has.
you know, building engines for this, that, and the other. Offies, I think they call them. Don't they? Guys, this is coming forward to in the late 1940s. You've still got our Model A engine in here. It's got
correct, yep.
twin carbs. Make it go faster, did it?
Gives it more fuel, which more fuel produces more spark, so it does go faster. Bill. Yep.
Yeah. And it's still got the no frame. It's still got the lovely shape. And
no roll bar
no.
for protection back in those days.
And it's got a different grille, of course, coming forward a wee bit. I just noticed, but they have bodged that radiator fitted in there, like.
Yeah, well, what they did was they made a lot of the radiator parts were handmade, so they would make them out of brass or copper,
Yep.
and solder them up themselves. Big thick cores to run a lot of water for cooling. Yep.
So I noticed is this a handle here? Is that just the brake?
That's the handbrake. Yep.
That's all.
That's all they had.
And he'd hardly use it except to pull up at the skids.
Pretty
Not
much.
the skids, the pit.
Pretty much to stop at the end of the race. Yeah.
They used to push start them by hand,
Oh, okay.
and the driver would pull the brake and drop it into gear at the same time.
Talking about gears, how many gears has it got? 1, 2, 3, 4, or 3 or 2? 1.
Or 2 in gear or out of gear.
So it's flat out or stop.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair enough.
They were called a dog box, so and they were made out of a normal car, and adapted Model A drivetrain, and you'd lock it into gear, and then back in those days the crew members would push the vehicle to get it started. Nowadays they use a push truck or a jeep to get them going, and the reason they didn't have a starter motor was to keep the weight down.
Has it got a battery?
It has a little battery. The battery fits in here, and all the battery does is just supply
Little sparks.
spark to the.
Is that the same size as a little motorbike battery, something like that?
Yeah.
Well,
They took all the water pump and fans off of them, so they have no fan for cooling, just the
air coming through the
air
front.
coming through.
Wow.
Also circular water cooling system.
Yeah, Danny was talking about having a spring right across the front, and I guess a lot of cars in that time had a spring right across the front rather than normally, as we know today. But that's just interesting, the same springing arrangement as a normal car, same at the back there, the spring goes straight over. Wow.
Yep.
Did you hire drivers, or did they volunteer their services, or did you sort of
Well, what
see-
happens, the promoters here were bringing the American drivers down, and I was supplying the car.
Oh, okay.
And the original
Right.
promoter was paying me for the car, for the use of the car. What happens now is that they bring the Americans down, and they bring them down with their own cars.
Oh, so they stick them on a plane and fly them here.
They do that when they can afford to do it. Like I said to you, our track at Western Springs is, it don't get the crowds they used to get the crowds, because what the council done to the track, and the Ponsonby Rugby Club going in there, and so they're not getting the crowds, and the promoters are not doing it. And I don't know how many races we got there this year, but I don't believe it's very many.
No. How many midget race tracks are there in the country, do you know?
Oh, there's about maybe 10 in total,
Oh, okay.
8 to 10, maybe more.
The South Island, North Island combined, yeah.
Yeah, maybe more, I'm not really sure, because they have closed the old track. Like Tauranga, I believe they're closing that, or they've closed it and they're going to build one next door or something like that.
Wow.
But like I said, it's one of the biggest sports
In the world.
in the world, motor racing, and the Kiwis are heading it all.
Good on them.
The manufacturer of the cars originally was John Godfrey, and he's a Kiwi.
Wow.
And Bob Marcus manufactured the LTC, which was that one there, Carruthers.
And this is the first in 1937, this one.
This won the very first midget race at Western Springs in 1937.
You have to say that the shape of this thing, the shape doesn't look too much different from what they are now. I mean, it's got that basic round bottom, and it's got this curve in here, and the bonnets have changed over the years, I'm told.
Yeah, just got a bit more streamlined and
yes, and a bit more practical. I mean, they've got the the bars to stop if you flip over. You've got less chance of killing yourself. So which brings me to the point, if you're a midget driver in 1937, you are taking one hell of a risk.
oh, for sure.
Absolutely,
They
yeah.
were very, very brave men back in those days, because as you can see with the photos, their chest high were out of the vehicle, and if it did land on its side or go upside down, there was a great percentage of damage being done to the person.
Absolutely.
You didn't know any different then.
No, let's give it a go. This is fun, let's do this. So, I'm just thinking about, when did New Zealand produce their own midgets? When did they turn up? New Zealand made midgets?
Yeah, 1938.
On 38, so the very next year New Zealand is
Well, they had 2 or 3 drivers started building their own midgets that very first year.
Oh, okay. Wow. And they look
Jerry
like this?
Matheson.
Did they look like this, or very similar to
Yep.
this? Yeah.
There's one over there.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So they used when the Americans came and brought these cars down, the Kiwi guys would then take drawings and then copy them and reproduce them, because they were all made out of road cars.
Right.
The chassis rails, the Model T diffs, the steering boxes, and the front springs were all out of road cars.
And behind me here, folks, is the American team that came in 1937. Do you know any of these guys? Do you know any of these people? Have you met any of these people?
No, I never actually met them. I was too young then.
Oh.
but I spoke to the one that raced this car over the phone
Right,
a few times when I first got it to restore,
right.
and I got in contact with him.
Well, here I am in the cafe, and it's just like going back to 1950. The chairs of the time, Formica I think it's all called, and the black and white floors. There's Elvis Presley over there, there's a jukebox over there, there's memorabilia behind me, that beautiful montage of cars behind me. There's even an old Dodgem. Remember the Dodgems that they used to show? Boom, boom, boom. Wonderful. And I'm having a big breakfast. It's bacon and eggs. And so if you come here with your group to have a look at the museum, you can sit down and have a wonderful meal before you even start. So look at that. Bacon and eggs, sausages, tomatoes, toast, mushrooms, the whole 9 yards. And a cup of tea to wash it all down. So there you go. When you come here, come in and have a meal first, and then enjoy yourself in the museum. Would you like to come and catch a pig with me tomorrow?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Excellent. When there's 5 or 6 cars all going around that straight, the corner together, they're all in the slide.
Yes.
Is there an opportunity there to pass?
If you've got the right setup, there is. But like I keep saying, Western Springs was one of the best tracks in the world and get the most crowd. And you could do that. And at one stage, my driver, they had a velodrome there for the bikes.
Bicycles.
And you weren't allowed up on the velodrome. And of course, I had this guy, Sleepy Trip. He was getting paid win, lose or draw by the promoter. So he went up on the velodrome. and just cut right round the top of the thing and came back down. The crowd went crazy and they disqualified him.
Oh.
But he didn't worry because he was getting paid anyhow.
Anyway, yeah, so let's have some fun.
Yeah.
Is Sleepy Trip still with us?
Yes, he is.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I talk to him on a regular basis, yeah.
Right. So when you get a number, like 3, what's 3, 3, 3, these are all, well, that lot there are all 3s. Do you, is that your number? You keep that number?
No, it's not. In most cases, the number you have to in other words, you can't have 2 3s on the track
Oh, okay.
unless you've got a number 3 car out of America, number 3 car out of New Zealand, and a number 3 car out of Australia. And usually it's where they finish in the competition.
Right.
But like I say, the rules are different in different places. Like for instance, they call them speed cars in Australia.
Not midgets.
And not midgets.
Oh.
Right, so a friend of mine, John Kelly, he drove a car for me, and he runs midget cars in Australia. He owns Midget Cars Australia, he officiates and does everything.
Wow.
So they have a midget car title in Australia and a speed car title.
Okay. Wow. There's a brake pad caliper there, and there's not one on this side. Is that?
Yeah.
Is
well,
there a
what
reason for
happens?
that?
Yeah, there is. They only have it on one side because if you have it on both sides, it tends to pull the car to one side.
Oh, okay. All right. So you're on a left-hand turn most of the time.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You're turning left all the time, so you need one on the left side of the car.
Right, and that keeps it it going left.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you've also got an adjustment in the car where you can have more brake on the back in reference to the front.
Right. That's interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah, because if you have the brake even, or the brakes come on the front, it tends to lock it and spin the car.
And is it the same with the back?
The back has one rotor. It doesn't have it out on the wheel, it has it inside.
Oh, inside near the diff there somewhere.
Brake.
Yeah. Wow. And Danny was saying that the brakes are only on the left-hand side. The brake on the modern cars is that there's a caliper and a disc brake just on the left.
That's to help them turn left. So if they touch the brake, it'll pull the car to the left.
Yes.
And they'll have one on the, instead of on the wheel, they'll have a brake on the diff. So it stops the diff from turning.
Tell me about the seating. I mean, was that designed for the man who's going to sit in it, or did they build the car, that's where you sit, put up with it?
No, you've built it to fit the guys.
Okay. Right. So it's not a luck thing, it's made for you.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not always, but
No.
mostly,
You've got 2 dials on this dashboard, such as it is. I guess that's water and oil.
Correct, yeah. Water and oil temperature.
That's all they want to know.
Yep. And to start, when they pushed the vehicle away, the driver would pull the ignition switch on, and that would fire the vehicle with the momentum of the back wheels. So that was...
And so that stayed on for the rest of the trip?
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that exhaust pipe get hot? I'm just looking at about where his elbow is going to be in that exhaust pipe.
Yeah.
So he's just
they
got
get very hot,
keep his elbow out of the way.
use aviation fuel.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's amazing. So how many men from the time they started to now have gone through Speedway driving midgets? Hundreds? Thousands?
Thousands.
Thousands. Yeah, so everybody and his dogs had to go.
Oh, Yeah, not as they do. But yeah, no, if they're brave enough to jump in one.
Yep.
No, they'll.
You have to have it in you to race, I think, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you've got to start somewhere, I suppose. So you'll be coming last a couple of times, then you slowly figure out what you need to do.
Yeah, figure out the track, figure out your power to rate ratios, and grow more and more in confidence to get faster and faster.
That's true. Yeah. Christmas isn't all that far away, and so if you're looking for a present for the truck driver or somebody interested in transport in your life, then my Talking Trucks book might be just the thing. So if you'd like a copy, just email me, billhohepper@extra.co.nz, and I'll take your details and I'll get a copy in the post to you. Now this book covers trucks basically heading back from about 1972 to the time they started making vehicles. So a good historical book, and tells you all about the New Zealand transport industry up until about 1972. So for a Christmas present, perfect. Email me, billhohepper@extra.co.nz. Well, I've come into the museum now, and just looking around, there's all sorts of cars from the 50s and 60s, 30s. There's a couple of 20s in here even, and it's a magnificent collection. So there's lots and lots of stuff in this museum for you to look at. Lots and lots of stuff that's going to take you right back to the day. And if you're new, well, there's lots of stuff here about New Zealand history. So if you come here, you're coming to Railside Place, which is off Rifle Range Road in Hamilton. Certainly worth a look if you belong to a car club or some sort of a club and you want a place to go. This is the place to come, and you can start off with a meal in the cafe. Come and have a look, enjoy yourselves. I absolutely recommend it.
So, Bill, back in 1875, the Motions family bought the land at Western Springs, and they made the lake because you got to remember, how did it get the name Western Springs? The site was to the west of Auckland City, so it was western, and it's natural water springs coming out of the ground.
Wow.
So that's where the name Western Springs came from. So the Motion family built the lake. It's about 6 foot deep in depth, and the water pumps out of the ground. And they donated or built the water pump station next to the lake, and that water pump fed Auckland City's water.
Wow.
Which is now Motat.
Yes.
Then Auckland City Council came to the Motions family and sold where the stadium now is, which was an old volcano, natural amphitheatre. And the Auckland City Council built the velodrome, and it was built for cycling, 500 metres round yards round the outside, 440 metre running track on the cinders for athletics, and then the infield was for football and all the ground sports like discus, shot put, high jump, and that was what the stadium was originally built for. Then come 1929, that's the first program of 30th of December 1929, they introduced motorcycle speedway, or broad sliders as they called them in those days. And that was a major attraction, so motorbikes going around the quarter mile, broad sliding, right up until we spoke until 37 when the midgets became involved.
I see this is sixpence. That's actually quite expensive, really, when you think of the time, 29, sixpence.
Yeah.
Well, it would be more like tuppence. There's a car on the front here called a New Superior Whippet. It says New Superior Whippet, and you never hear of whippets these days, although
not nowadays. No.
I've seen one in my travels. It was a whippet truck, and it lives down towards Greymouth. A couple of brothers have got it in their shed. Whippet.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Well, the front looks exactly like that, but of course it's a truck.
Yeah.
But Interesting. Oh, there you go, folks. The very first program, you would have got one of these. It would have been a boy, bit like the star, the star people in Queensland,
Get your
yelling out.
program, yeah.
That's right.
I don't know if they had hot dogs back in those days.
No, I don't know. Well, they would have had something, I'm sure, to eat.
Some catering.
Yeah, it's amazing. There's a man you were talking about called Satan. Somebody.
Satan Brewer.
Satan Brewer. He's was a popular name in Speedway at which stage? About 50s, was he?
From late 30s to mid 50s.
Oh, okay. And they called him Satan because
he drove like the devil.
okay, nothing's going to get in his way. Fair enough.
Yeah, he was one of the first New Zealanders to go to America and beat the Americans in America. Yeah.
They wouldn't have liked that, would they? They wouldn't have.
Greatest ever drivers.
Really?
Yeah. Really.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, what was his first real name?
Frank.
Frank. Oh, okay,
Frank
but
Brewer.
nobody would have called him Frank. Satan.
No.
There you go, mate.
That's right. Yeah.
Just all the pipes coming out of that engine, and they're all sort of all merging into one.
All those pipes are tuned. You have to take the motor to a dyno, and you've got to tune the length of the pipe.
Oh, okay.
And the length of the pipe determines where the power comes in.
Right.
So there's a lot in it. It's not just
It doesn't
put a motor in there.
No, and just throw some pipes on that.
Yeah.
No. Fair enough.
I done a lot of development, a lot of research, and when they start the races, I got my guys to come down really slow at the start of the race, and then when they dropped the green, it had the jump. But to get that jump, there was a lot of things that you had to do to the car.
Wow.
To the motor, the length of their intakes, the shape of the intakes, the timing of the camshaft, and all the porting inside the cylinder head. And when you buy them from the factory, a lot of that stuff is not very accurate.
So you go and get it tuned.
And don't get it tuned. You've got to tune the motor. You've got to put the motor on the dyno, and there's a lot in it.
Wow. Gordon, this is a modified, well, somebody's modified the head and made it, and took the old Model A head off and put this on.
Yeah, well, that was developed in it's an American head, just purely for racing. Yeah.
Right. So that's all. That's the only reason that's all it does, racing.
Well, some guys use them on hot rods, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
Mr. Thomas.
Thomas.
Yeah. Wow. Some very clever men about it. They look at something, think about it, and come up with something like this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Excellent. This is a helmet I remember when I got a motorbike. It was just a little Lendich motor scooter. This is what they gave me, just a little, there was no peak on it or anything, and the leather went under your chin and off you went. I think the traffic cops had pretty similar
right.
helmets as well.
Yeah.
But this is the helmet of the time.
That's the helmet of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And he would have had the aeroplane goggles.
Yeah.
So that's to keep the cinders out of his eyes and the dust and all the rest of it.
Yeah. And then they used to have what they called gas goggles. They used to put over top of those.
Oh,
When they got covered in cinders, they dropped them down and around their neck, so they still had
still had good
clear
vision.
goggles. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a whole room, well, there's rooms full of memorabilia here that Gordon's collected and people have donated to Gordon over the years. And I haven't got enough time to talk about everything that he's got here, but it's certainly worth me coming back and having another chat to Gordon about the history of Speedway in New Zealand. So thank you very much, Gordon.
You're welcome.
Absolute pleasure. And we'll see you all next week.